A similar question at one of the recent community meetings, and that is something that we are looking at as we go through the evaluation to understand, how do we get account, or how do we make sure that changes in precipitation patterns are taken into account as we go forward. So still working on that, don't have a clear answer yet, but thank you for raising it.
Thank you. I think cleaning it up would help remedy, because leaving it in the ground, unlined in the groundwater, that does not remove that risk with the historic ring fencing. And we don't know where that is going, regardless of how you feel with climate change and that type in that realm. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, this gentleman asked, why is Asheville ranked high and Cliffside isn't? And in defense of the DEQ staff, they really can't say why, because it involves what happened in the legislature, and that's not their job to comment on it. But I can, as a private citizen, tell you what I observed happen. Is that in 2013, on behalf of Mount True, one of the groups here, and other community groups in the state, we, the Southern Environmental Law Center, took legal action on 3 sites: Asheville, Riverbend, which is this one, and Sutton, which is in Wilmington. And we had to fight the then government and you for a year, saying there was nothing. They were saying there was nothing to our claim that they shouldn't be required to excavate. And then almost literally 4 years ago today, on Super Bowl Sunday, we had the Dan Rivers catastrophe. And a federal criminal grand jury was almost immediately disclosed. Subpoenas were issued. There were big newspaper articles. And and then the president of Duke Energy said, well, in response to all this, we're going to voluntarily agree to excavate 4 sites. The 3 we had sued on, and Dan River side of the spill. That's what happened. Then the legislature, seeing the political risk they were under, passed a bill called the Coal Ash Management Act, and they mandated excavation of 4 sites. Guess which 4? The 4 Duke had already said they were going to excavate. Members of the legislature, some tried to add other sites, but the leadership knocked it down. Nevertheless, the new bill did require evaluation of all the sites, and as the gentleman alluded to, DEQ, under the original Coal Ash Management Act, evaluated all the sites. And in 2016, they announced this site had to be excavated under the Coal Ash Management Act. It was ranked intermediate. Well, then, the then government and Duke Energy descended on the legislature, and they changed the act without any public hearing to postpone that, to overturn that requirement. So it was ranked. The reason it wasn't ranked the first time was it wasn't one of the 3 that had been sued on. It wasn't Dan River. It was ranked the second time. But then they got the law changed, and they kicked the ball down kicked the can down the road. And what they said then was, you don't even have to evaluate DEQ pollution. As long as they do whatever dam repairs you require and provide water to people within, only those within a half mile will go through this process. That's why they're here. That's why it had been cleaned up before. And that's why Asheville was treated differently. It's purely circumstances. That's what happened.
We have clarification to one question that you asked.
A question was raised on what type of treatment was required for the decanting, and Mr. Smith thought it was an RO system. The permits are set up on a water quality standard, so they have limits in, and then the treatment technology is really up to Duke to put in to assure that they're going to meet those limits to protect water quality. And then there's 2 thresholds in the permit where as they get further down and decant more water and they get closer to where the ash is, then there's an increased monitoring and oversight coming keep it protected with the water quality as we can.
So they won't pump it to the other line container?
And my understanding is that it would go out the existing home falls. They're already permitted outfalls.
Why wouldn't they pump it to the line there?
No, I believe the line area you're talking about is for the ash. And then what we're talking about is the free water. Right.
I mean, not why, I mean, what I'm asking is, you know, related to that fellow's question. You know, Asheville has record rainfall. Rutherford County had the third most rainfall it ever had in this. So, I mean, if there's gonna be more water, you know, why are we going to just treat it? You know, Duke has the choice of how to treat it, and then, you know, put it, some of that's gonna go back in the river, isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Why?
Well, part of it is that the approach of the permitting program is to assure whether it's domestic wastewater or a Duke facility or whomever has a permit, that water is discharged in a manner that's safe for that receiving water. That permitting program is set up to do that. The idea is that it sets appropriate limits and it's protective of that service level.
What happens when you get to that level? If you still got
What I want
those
to
people that
ask
water on it,
is how come
they
DEQ
just sit there till
the
rain wants to cut off or doing fine stuff. What you're saying is you're gonna talk to them off.
Sure, so there's,
And you're gonna monitor. And when they get to a certain point, you'll stop it. If you monitor any high.
so the goal is to get the water out of the basin so that they can do the closure.
But if
They'll,
it gets high, are you gonna stop?
They-
You're not gonna keep pumping it in the river, are you?
So that's when they would have to do additional treatment to meet the limits if they're going to continue to put it into the river. Or find a different management option. Likely they'll find treatment so that they can continue to
Just
discharge.
pump it up there, so.
While at the same time, they'll incorporate stormwater control to keep the runoff out of those ponds. So it would be additional rainwater would be going in and they would have to manage that.
Hello, I'm David Caldwell. I'm with the Broad River Alliance. We are a program of Mountain True and a Waterkeeper affiliate. And of course, we are in favor of full excavation for both of the ash ponds in Cliffside. I have several questions, and if I may just ask them one at a time. And they have to deal with the effectiveness of the cap-in-place method. And when I say cap-in-place, I'm talking about cap or hybrid. First off, we know that the active ash basin, which is by far the larger basin in Cliffside, the ash sits in the groundwater there, and it also sits below the level of the river. And it seems that the effectiveness of the cap-in-place method totally relies on drying the ash out and putting the cap over it. So if the ash sits in the groundwater and below the level of the river, how can we expect that the exchange between groundwater, ash pond water, and the river doesn't continue?
Excellent question, and that's very much what we are evaluating right now. We have a team of our in-house hydrogeologists looking at some of the groundwater modeling. We also have hired an outside expert to help with reviewing the groundwater modeling to understand, is this groundwater modeling believable or not? Are there changes that should be made to basically try and answer that very question, and what would happen to the groundwater in a cap-in-place scenario. So it's very much part of the ongoing technical review.
Okay, thank you. And just to add to that, I know that the banks of the Broad River are mostly sand, and it just seems to me that there's no way to stop an exchange of water between the Broad River and the bottom of that coal ash pond. And my second question, along the same lines, in reviewing the closure plan that came out 3 years ago, that HDR Engineering put together, there was a paragraph in there that described the geography of the ash pond and the stream valley in which it was built. And basically it said that the pond was built by damming up a mile-long stream valley. Okay, so again, it seems to me that unless you cap that entire stream valley, then any water that hits a hill and run towards the ash pond in that valley is going to go under the cap, into the ash, and again, right to the groundwater or the river water.
And again, those types of questions are very much what our own hydrogeologists are considering and evaluating. So that is very much a concern that we have as well.
Very good. We know that there's, at least 30 seeps around the dam of the active ash pond. I think 2 of those were constructed seeps. They've been permitted now. So if water remains in the ash, which it certainly will, and these seeps continue, we know that the water in these seeps is polluted. Levels of heavy metals exceed the standards, and